Welcome to the OC. I'm Phil. This is my co-host Corey, and tonight we are talking about the sleeping prophet. Isn't that a great name? Edgar Cayce.
Yeah. Anytime you get a wrestling name out of something, the sleeping prophet, you could almost see him coming into the ring. The sleeping prophet.
Edgar Cayce. He was not a formidable man. He did not look. But he was pretty cool. A
lot of cool stuff going on with him.
Yeah. So, do you want to take it away? Like, you want to?
Yeah, how about I start? So, what we'll do, for anybody who's watching this episode, so hopefully you stay with us to the end. But in case you don't, this episode is about Edgar Cayce, America's prophet, the sleeping prophet.
Yes.
He was born 1877, died 1945. There's currently an organization it's not named after him. It's called the Association of Research and Enlightenment. It's at edwardcayce.org. So it's still going all these years later.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of prophecies. Guy was apparently a big time psychic.
Was a psychic. He had a bunch of things, but he's also, what do they say? He's the father of
a quack.
Okay, a quack. The father of holistic medicine. I believe.
I think homeopathic, not. I think I want to say
homeopathic.
I want to say homeopathic, but I'll have to look at my notes for that. They also he's the father of the New Age movement.
That's right. Yeah. So, kind of an interesting fellow. I mean, there's a lot to read about him. He's everywhere. I'd never heard of him before this. You must have. You chose him.
Well, you did hear of him, actually.
Oh, I did.
A little episode called Atlantis.
You did bring him up.
He was the one. So that's where I actually stuck that in my back pocket. So he was one of the ones that predicted that the road to Atlantis would be found.
That was one of his big claims to fame that never happened.
Okay. The Bimpy, we'll talk about the Bimpy Road again. It was about 4,000 miles off and about 40 years and 40,000 miles off, but let's not worry about that.
No, let's not. Let's talk about him. And he's American clairvoyant. He saw auras. This all started like he was young, right? Like he was just a boy. And basically he was a devout Christian.
I believe a Methodist is what his denomination was. Although I saw later when he moved around a bit, similar to H.H. Holmes, he wound up joining something called the Disciples of Christ.
Yeah.
But he was I believe he was raised a Methodist. I believe
Catholicism is some way, shape, or form. But he was devout. Like he read the Bible every year. He would finish the Bible in full. There's lots of that stuff. He was a Sunday school teacher.
But let's go back to when he was a kid.
Yeah, he was a little guy. Yeah.
When he was a little guy, right? So he was raised in this devout Christian household, and apparently he saw spirits. He would actually talk to his dead grandfather. He would have imaginary friends, and he would talk to spirits. Yeah,
which is a little weird because my kids started to talk to people that weren't there. I'd be like, all right, we need to go see somebody.
Well, okay, so audio and visual hallucinations are a sign of
usually schizophrenia,
right? He's a kid, so
he's a child.
Kids have imaginations, and oftentimes we diagnose them as if they're adults, and they're not, right? But in this case, he was apparently very special. He would talk to his dead grandfather's ghost.
That was the big one. Talking to Grandpa. Grandpa was at the supper table, and they were shooting the shit.
Yeah. Remember, did you read about his spelling bee excellence?
Yeah, I read about it and then he was not a good student. I mean, that was basically like his whole schooling. He was very much that kid that was just off and left. He was me. I don't know. Squirrel. Shit. But that he was not a great student. And his father ended up disciplining him and doing,
they say he knocked him out of his the one thing I had read was they were preparing for a spelling bee. Okay, now how's this for pressure, folks? You're a terrible speller. Your dad's obviously wanting you to do awesome at the spelling bee, and when you get stuff wrong, he's smacking you around and knocking you out of your chair.
Yeah, you're gonna learn pretty quick.
Or
Or you use your powers of clairvoyance.
Or you use your powers. And in this case, apparently a beautiful woman with, I think, silver wings.
Yeah.
Basically
So
tuck the book under your pillow. And
while he was, reading his Bible in a hut in the woods. He had a hut in the woods.
He had a hut.
We had another
hut in the woods. I had like, remember that treehouse in the airport?
Oh my God, your treehouse was. I'm surprised we didn't die or at least get tetanus. That's crazy.
Worst workmanship ever.
Well, it was more of a tree platform. It was the walls.
2 tree platforms with
several, and it was high. It was high up in the air. Jesus Christ. I don't know how we did.
So I had looked at it when I say recently, let's say 10 years ago, and I was like, I remember it being higher. It's like, oh, it's actually like my height off the ground, which is high.
Really?
3 feet tall. It wasn't as high up as we thought.
Oh my God. It seemed like really tall for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause, I don't know. It was not good design work. It's still standing. It's still attached to trees.
It's still attached to trees. Now, again, I haven't been there in the last 10 years, but I mean,
yeah, that's true.
I don't want to stand on it. I think that would probably.
I don't think that would be a good idea. No. So yeah, he sees this woman with wings. We're assuming that's an angel. And she says, hey, all your prayers will come true. And basically tells him about putting the book under his pillow, and subconsciously he'll learn everything. And guess what? He does
everything. All the words, gets them perfect.
That's right. Or the beatings really did help learning how to spell. But apparently it worked with all of his subjects. So he would do that with math, and he would do that with writing in English and all this other stuff. It seemed to work. So so I don't want him to come off as this absolute clown, because you know what, he's sort of an enigma in some ways. I mean,
he actually genuinely cared. So one
thing I think he did
found consistent is he, regardless of what he was saying or doing, he genuinely cared. The other story about the angel is the angel asked him, "What would you like?" And he said, "I want to be able to help people."
That's right, and to become a missionary. That was his idea.
Missionary, Sunday school teacher, like he was. Okay.
Yeah, he's a regular saint in his own mind, but the fact is he was very religious, at least initially, and a lot of the stuff when you're talking about psychic powers and that usually is what gets you burned at the stake as a witch, or goes against some of the tenets of And I read one thing where they talked about he was either a complete fraud, he was either psychotic or schizophrenic. They say psychotic, but I think they really meant schizophrenic. Yeah, right.
He was either actually gifted or he was being manipulated by the devil. And this one fellow talked about burning all his books that he had bought of Edgar Cayce's. So he was like, no, I'm pretty sure he was manipulated by the devil. Like this was the devil pushing his.
Perhaps.
Edward Cayce was this unwitting pawn in the devil's great game.
Yeah, because he was always at odds with himself, being a devout, man of faith, God, whatever religion. He was Catholicism of some sort. So he was always at odds with the fact that he had, this supernatural ability, and he didn't know what to do with it. Right. And now I couldn't really see where he started to actually do readings with people, where he figured it out.
So what I got in my notes is in 1893, he winds up moving to Kentucky. Okay.
Right. Okay.
And he gets a severe case of laryngitis. So terrible that he can't talk at all. Right. And that's awful, given the fact that everything you hear about him is like the guy talks, a missionary, Sunday school teacher, whatever.
Right.
So what happens is apparently he goes to a hypnotist.
That's that Al guy, right?
Yeah. What's the name? Let me just pull up the name here. Boop, 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 boop.
Yeah, it was it Laurel?
Where the hell?
Anyway, he meets
He
that
goes
fellow.
to a hypnotist. So instead of like, because apparently medicine can't do anything for him, so he goes to a
Yeah.
hypnotist.
Yeah, because he
And the
can't talk.
hypnotist, he can't talk, right? Like it's like so bad. It's massive
Mhm.
laryngitis. So, and the guy puts him under and basically tells him, hey, why don't you heal yourself?
Yeah,
And he does.
it's Al Lane is his name.
Elaine.
Al Lane, not Elaine. Al
Not
Lane,
Elaine.
not
Elaine.
Elaine from Seinfeld. One of my, yeah. So he helps him, but then he learns about, his gifts, right, as well. And he couldn't actually put him into, which was kind of interesting, like the deeper stages of
The
hypnosis.
suggestive stage, right? This is what they're talking about. Where you get to the last stage where you're able to actually take suggestions versus state of relaxation.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. I mean, but they say that there's only a certain. I remember going to Paul Reuter when I was in college, right? But some people did some fucking ridiculous things. Like these are people that we knew, that you were like, what the fuck has just happened here? Very odd. Like he was one of those guys that made people do some pretty on the risque side of things with each other, and they were okay, but they take you into a room. And I was one of the ones that went in, and then I didn't qualify to, I don't know how he knows, but
I've worked with you. I feel I've known you long enough. You don't take suggestions, commands, comments.
Not great.
Gentle nudging well at all.
But he knew there was a whole bunch of us actually. And you go into this room, you sit, and then he goes, you, and you guys can all leave, except for these guys. And we all just went out and enjoyed the show. And then now after seeing it, I'm like, holy fuck, I'm really glad that I didn't go on there. Jesus. But yeah, it was interesting, the hypnotic thing. So,
and this is the start of where he develops the ability to put himself in this trance. So he relied on the hypnotist for a bit to get him in it, but eventually he develops the ability to essentially, resting his hands on his stomach and sighing deeply, is able to sink into this receptive state where he is a prophet,
where he does not know what he's saying, right? Like he's unaware. And I think that's the other part of his dilemma, is that he does not, so he claims he doesn't know what he's saying to help people, right?
And that was the focus. So the focus initially was not on predicting world events like Atlantis. It was more about, okay, I'll go into my trance. All right, Phil, you're going to ask me, why does it hurt when I go pee-pee? And I'm gonna give you some advice. And this is where things get a little weird, so because some of the stuff he would say is like, boil this, rub this,
but
do this.
So now, with that said, I mean, a lot of his things were very, very much what we know today, right? Like drink more water. You're dehydrated. You eat
more, cook with olive oil.
You need to walk. You need to. So a lot of his recommendations were, they say like his recommendation for diet was very much along the guidelines of the Mediterranean diet, right? Where, eat more fruit and vegetables, don't eat so much in terms of breads and, high carbohydrate, which today, anyone who does that feels better as a person. I mean, I know like myself.
Said, exercise and water. Drink water.
Exercise. Drink water. Yeah, drink more water. And because a lot of people, my daughter included, does not like drinking just plain old water. She doesn't like it.
Same. She will not drink it unless I put something in it, and not bourbon, like we talked about.
Bourbon's good.
Bourbon's good. She needs like grape
ice is water
or something. Ice, water ice.
That's right. No, and she's the same. Like and it's always like, oh, I have a headache. I'm like, yeah, you're probably dehydrated. I mean, those are very common things that, most people walk around very dehydrated. But that was what some of his suggestions were, right? So, no, he was
weird ones, Phil. A lot of weird ones where it's like, and we're not talking rub oil illuminate on your elbow to arthritis go away. We're talking like boil this and drink this.
Now,
apparently some of
I didn't read any of those really, but I know that, yeah, but he had a really high success rate for making people feel better.
Okay, but part of so this is where it comes back to the whole psychosomatic,
Right.
like the placebo effect that I've went to the sleeping prophet. Now, and I'm trying to figure out exactly how everything.
Do not underestimate the power of placebo. Like that is still done in clinical trials, and there is still a huge number of people that feel better because they're told this is going to make them feel better. It's fucking insane.
Yeah.
And like you say, right? He's the prophet, and he's telling you to do this. He's telling you to take a toad and lick its ass every 10 minutes and you feel better. Well, grab your toad and let's fucking do this, man.
Well, right.
Right. And I feel better.
Where you start delving into it, you wonder, where did people start saying, hey, we want to go see this guy? Because I was trying to figure that out. Like,
his dad had said that he had developed this ability to, see auras and things when he was a young boy. Right. So I think this all developed. So they say that, there's 14,000 documented cases of him actually.
His actual readings, right? Like the readings.
Yeah, but he did about 8,000 before they even became documented. So that's a big fucking number. Like even if he was doing one a day.
And let's not forget,
like
not charging for your services. So
he refused to charge people up until like he didn't have much of a choice. He tried to keep getting jobs over and over again, and it just fucking man had no luck.
He ran 2 photographic studios that burned
to the ground. Yeah, a little weird.
Yeah.
Well, he got jobs doing other things, but he just never seemed to be able to. He didn't have a lot of success financially, but he still would not, even though he had children. He had, I think, 3 children, but one passed away when it was small. But he eventually said, "Okay, well, on a voluntary basis, if you guys want to donate whatever you can, whatever you want." Eventually, that's how he made a living. And I'm not sure if he ever was. There's no mention that he was rich.
No, but he was certainly, when you look at the assets he controlled, right? I mean, or had an influence of. I mean, he might not
later in life, but at the beginning, for quite some time, he was like, "No, I'll just do this because I want to help people." And one thing I found interesting was that he didn't have to actually see the person in person. Did you find that interesting? Like, I mean,
yeah.
So I could write him a letter.
We're letters. That's right. It's not
a letter.
I called you on the phone. This is 1930s, right? So this is like
and he's like
20s.
Yeah, 1920s, and he's like, I just need to know their name and where they live. That's a little weird. And then he was able to give some pretty stunning, diagnosis over. He didn't ask them to tell them any of their symptoms or anything. Like, I think that was one of the, very strange, right? And then he goes, okay, well, this is what you're experiencing. And to have a success rate at all, not knowing what they're experiencing, it's interesting. It's enough to go, okay, this is weird.
There's
something weird.
It's a complete, and so fortune tellers generally are very good at reading people, right? But
for sure,
it requires you to be in person, and they'll ask the sort of leading questions, but that requires a dialogue back and forth. This guy would get a letter from somebody who would say, why do I hurt all the time, or something, or whatever, right? It would be a vague, high level thing, and then he would go into his trance. And his wife initially was the one, I believe, who recorded it.
Yeah,
would say, okay, here's what he says. Lick the
well, yeah, and that Al guy did some recording, and then it finally came down to his secretary, which stayed with him like I think and forever, because she was one of the ones that was quick enough to actually record, everything that he was saying. Like she was like a stenographer.
A stenographer. That's because my mother used to know shorthand.
Stenographer or something like that. Yeah, so she was like the court document type thing. But he had some famous people too that Woodrow Wilson.
So
there was a whole bunch of these. Yeah, like
they track down some of his famous clients, right? So we look at it.
Yeah,
Woodrow Wilson was apparently Thomas Edison was one of his.
Thomas Edison, like these are men of science and men of politics and they were from like firm believers of his ability. So he, you've got to kind of say to yourself, like, what the fuck? Like, was this guy? I mean, if you throw enough stones at a nickel from 100 yards, eventually you'll hit the nickel.
A broken watch is right twice per day, right?
Well, of course, yeah. But in terms of this guy, I mean, he did thousands of predictions. It'd be interesting to see the outcome, right? If you had a number, he did 14,000. Now, 14,000 included things like Atlantis, and some of that shit that I read, it's just garbly goop of
how about
stream of
before we jump into
consciousness.
those? How about we sort of we can just cover a bit more of his history before we
Sure. Yeah. So
some of the more interesting, because the history isn't super interesting. So this guy originally, like, he was in Kentucky. This is when he learned his abilities, and 2 of his photo studios burnt to the ground. He winds up moving to Alabama. This is where he actually does readings full time. So he's still not necessarily getting paid for it.
No, he's not getting paid for it. But he meets this guy, right? This is where he meets this Ketchum fella.
This boy.
So this guy, well, sort of, right? He's been people have tried to put him into business doing this for a long time, and he's refused. He's just downright said, no, I don't want to do this. If this is indeed a gift, it's a gift from God, and it should not be something that you monetize, right? And but other people had a lot of different ideas, but he tried all sorts of things, including making board games. Did you read about that?
The Pit, or what was it?
Yeah, it was Pit and then Board of Trade, and he got fucked. He sent the idea into, I don't even know the whatever game company it was, and because it didn't mention it, and then they copywrote it and like mass produced it, and he was like left out in the fucking. And then he did another one. I can't remember the name of it, but it was okay. Like it's still, apparently you can buy it to this day. I don't know the name of it, but
not the Ouija board, is it?
No.
I remember reading about the Pit,
Pit?
yeah, PTT, or
it was
whatever.
Called Pit, or Board of Trade, which is simulating wheat market trading.
Wow, exciting. Fun for the whole family.
Actually, sorry. This was the game, and it became popular. It was sent the idea to a game company. They copywrote it, and he got no returns. But he still refused to give readings for money. Like, people would offer him money, and he'd say, no, I don't know. And one of the biggest things I think that he faced was that he was worried about giving people the wrong advice, because he didn't always know what he was saying.
He didn't know at all what he was saying.
No,
with reconciling, like he could look afterwards, but trying to reconcile what he's saying, because he can talk about things, for example, like reincarnation.
That was a big one.
That's not a Christian thing.
No,
it's not a Christianity to talk. You know who talks about reincarnation? Buddhists.
Yeah.
You know how Buddhists talk about reincarnation?
No.
Apparently, we are trapped in this endless cycle of reincarnation. So we're screwed. And the only way to escape it and die fully is to achieve nirvana. So this was the Buddha. This was what the Buddha was trying to do. Figure out how to allow us to escape this endless cycle of.
Where do we go once we escape?
We cease to exist. We become one with the universe, one with the oneness. Which I don't think Edward was pushing. He was pushing, hey, you in a previous life, you were, I don't know, a stripper.
Yeah, perfect. That's not, well, anyway, so he meets this H. Ketchum guy, who's a homeopathic doctor, right? Also a con man. And basically he, his father introduces him to this guy saying, hey, you guys would make a perfect team. You like help heal people, and so does this Ketchum guy.
With Ash Ketchum from Pokemon.
Not Ash Ketchum, no. And I even know who that is because my son loves Pokemon. However, so he still says, no, I don't want to do this. Gets a job with this HP Tressler photography firm because he was a photographer. And that just didn't work out. And I think he finally just said, okay, we'll give it a try. And I think one of his things was he didn't want to take money still for readings.
Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean he wanted to live on the streets. It was like, I'm not going to take money from this.
Yeah.
So I can take money, but I need to live, FYI.
Yeah. So I think it would, yeah. Now, I'm not sure exactly how that worked out.
I want to say patrons. I want to say there was some patronage that was going on where similar to the idea back in the Renaissance.
Like a donation.
Like a donation, right? Or you have a wealthy patron who basically says, hey, you know what? I've set you up in a place.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
It was like my wedding, like when you have the ordained minister who you give a donation to of a set amount of money.
That's right. Agreed upon in advance.
Yeah, agreed upon. This is how much you're paying, by the way. Oh, but it is a donation. Okay. Well, we have a very different idea of what donation means, I guess. Anyway, back to Cayce. So yeah, he basically this Ketchum guy, this Wesley H. Ketchum, he's dirty. And so he's very oily. So while Cayce is underneath in his trance, in his sleeping prophet mode, Ketchum starts doing things like, hey, what's a good stock to invest in? Who's going to win the World Series? Shit like that. Which, I think a lot of people would be tempted to, ask.
And this is where things start changing for poor Cayce from helping people to prophesizing.
Yeah. Right. But Cayce finds out about this and is like, no, this is not how we do things. And then they go their separate ways. Something happens with this Ketchum fella. I think he loses whatever license he had at the same time. Who knows? He's a pretty slimy character. So anyway, people start finding out about this guy, and he starts making headlines. So Cayce is now becoming popular.
One of the headlines is illiterate man becomes doctor when hypnotized, right? Like that was,
but he wasn't illiterate.
He wasn't okay.
Yeah, he had a grade education, which for at that time was very standard for a working class individual. It was actually more than adequate to do most things.
Grade 9, but same idea. He didn't go.
Well, I think he was going to try and do grade 9, and they just couldn't afford it. Like his family wasn't rich, and he didn't have a lot of money. Like he was not a rich man, so.
But that also wasn't unusual for the time, right? If you were working class, and he was very working class. When we're talking photography, we're not talking him doing supermodel shoots. We're talking photography, and it was a very awful physical process at that time.
Yeah, he would have done where you see all those old people and they stand there and they're just so fucking serious.
So happy, but they're clearly so happy to be there.
Yeah, clearly happy. Yeah, right. It was a hard time, man. I mean, this is fucking, depression era. Nobody's happy. You're taking pictures. Okay, everybody smile. Smile for the camera. Oh, you're hungry? Oh, sorry.
We get one go with this. One go.
Yeah, one go. You get one flash bulb. That's all I got. Fuck, make it work. So anyway, he did invent another game called Pit. Sorry, and that was the card game based on commodities trading on the Chicago Board of Trade. These sound so interesting. I would just love to play these. And that game is still sold today.
Yeah.
So, but he started to make money. He needed to. He marries this chick, Geraldine? And
Gladley's, but let me pull up. I'll pull up his bio here. His wife is, we were both wrong. Gertrude Evans.
Oh, Gertrude.
It was a G word, but.
Hello, Gertie. Gertrude. Let's, have some kids.
And he apparently married her in 1903, believe it or
not. Yeah. So she stuck around with him, and she was very much, devout, whatever, Christian, Catholic, Methodist, Mormon, I don't know. So they both had this problem with what they were doing, because they're like, fuck, what if this is, we're going to go to hell for this, You know, that was their
This whole
biggest concern.
reconciling the two, right? That
Yeah.
our Christianity, everything I read, and I say me, I'm talking from Edgar's thing. I read the Bible once a year end to end, and I'm pretty sure this is all bad. The stuff like this ability we have, we're witches or
we're something. Yeah, but he still knew he felt like he was still helping people. And I think that outweighed, you know, that he felt that he was still doing good. So he continues to work, and he makes some money. You know, he's making some coin. He's doing okay. But shit starts to get a little weird. So he stops with just helping people. And then we get into some of the more weird things. Do you want to go there now? Do you think this is a...
Well, I think we can start going in there, because this is where he starts going a little deep in homeopathic medicine, the prophecies. Like, this is not just, go kiss a toad's arse, you'll get well. It's like, talking full on, like,
he's
weird quackery cruise, but he's now prophesizing.
Yeah, he's going down the rabbit hole. So I don't really know the actual record. Like, nobody makes him out to be a quack, so to speak, right?
The only time I hear for quackery is whenever you hear about some of the cures he was recommending. It was like, boil this, smoke that, drink this, rub this, right? Kind of folk remedies is what he was like. It was very folksy remedies that he was recommending.
Well, or even like
spray WD-40 on your elbow and it'll work, because
ammonia cures everything. Windex. What movie was that? Where the guy was dipping his arm in Windex. And anyway,
watch different movies, my friend.
We do. Not really. You, Corey.
Not really.
All right.
We watch slightly different movies. Have you seen Suicide Squad?
No, have you?
Yeah.
It wasn't good.
I enjoyed it. It was better.
I enjoyed the first. Okay. Well, I enjoyed the first one. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's better than that one? Wow.
Yeah. James Gunn does an interesting. He certainly goes very guardian. Think like a R-rated Guardians of the Galaxy, and you're probably not too far wrong. Like, imagine if they shot and blew people's faces off, like, randomly.
Oh. Perfect. So in other words, the kids don't. Yeah, it's not really. No. Okay.
No, they went very dark with it, Phil, and which they should do, because for those who don't know, Suicide Squad is about a bunch of DC supervillains who are in a supermax prison called Belle Reve, who get released with bombs in their necks to go do black ops. Yeah, and they're not nice people.
No, they're not good people at all. Yeah, Will Smith, I did not enjoy as a superhero.
Iris Alba is awesome. I have yet to find I don't like Iris Alba in.
Yeah, I mean, he could pretty much do anything.
If you go online, you can find something where it's Iris Alba can do anything. It's actually a skit on BBC. Oh, really? It's him rapping, and he's like, "I'm a barista."
I'm a barista.
When you get a chance, pull it up. You'll laugh. Yeah, that's right. He keeps doing different jobs, right?
For sure. It's like Mike Rowe. Dirty jobs.
Oh, Jesus.
All right, back to Cayce.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So, I mean, he gets people start to go, okay, so this is where things happen for Cayce. Now that he's helped people, then you have the people that are like, hey, I'm a scientist, and I'm looking for Atlantis. And then here we go.
Funny you mentioned scientists. So there were a couple cases where I read where he was tested by scientists, and they say he was treated roughly.
Yeah, he didn't like that. They did some weird shit to him. I'm not sure what that means.
I don't know what it means either. But
I read that too, and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. So why are you putting a probe up my ass while I'm in my sleepy stage?
Wait a second.
Wait a minute.
I need an adult, don't I?
Yeah. And what are these jumper cables to my nipples? Why are we? What's going on?
And let's not forget, this would have been 1930. So I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the scientific method was a thing, but this was the era where Thomas Edison was barbecuing elephants with like direct current.
Yeah. Really? With DC? You'd want AC for that.
So maybe he was okay. Tesla, was Tesla AC or DC?
DC. I think they were both DC in some respects, right? But
they were
Edison was
connected.
AC because he needed to light the light bulb. I don't know. They probably both started with batteries.
Well, they did, but I want to say Tesla was AC and Edison was DC, and they would compete. And they would, like, Edison,
Really?
to show how deadly AC was, he would go off and look, I ran it through an elephant and it barbecued. Well,
watch what happens to the heart when we give this a lot of electricity.
Exactly, right? So anyway,
yeah, both of them.
This was the era where
Yeah.
quackery, and if you had a scientist show up to try and track your psychic powers, I'm sure they were, like you said, probably some bum stuff going on with probes. That's the only thing I can think of with the way he said he was treated roughly.
I don't know why science has to be in your all up in your business like that. And one of his things,
Phil.
There's a few ways in if you really want to go that way, but I read about his controversial claims of I didn't understand this at first and I had to look it up, the polygenism.
Yes, polygenism or polygenesis. So
yeah.
This also links back to, by the way, our Atlantis episode, because Madame Blavatsky talked about the 4 root races, the whole idea that you had.
Well, there was 5 in his opinion.
There was 5 in his, but it's the same concept that instead of us evolving from a common ancestor, right?
Yeah, we were all separated. Yeah, there was white, black, red, brown, and yellow. Mm-hmm. And red was Atlantis, whatever that means. I mean, yeah.
This is a big controversy because he firmly believed that we were not all evolved from the same.
Now, did he? I don't know if he believed it. I think that because he believed that, Adam and Eve. He believed the Bible before anything else. So he was this was a statement he made.
Yes.
While in his happy place.
In his
happy sleepy place. Yeah, I don't know. But he made all these kind of things. And I was like, holy fuck. Like this dude sounds just like the guy from the Montauk Project, just spewing shit.
So my impression, everything I've read about Edgar, is there was an element of humility and charisma there. That this was not a guy who talked himself up. But
he didn't like people. He didn't even like meeting these people.
See the pictures of him? They do not look kind for him. Like you talk about those pictures where you're like, somebody looks like they want to tear your face off.
Yeah.
While this picture's happening. None of them, he looks happy.
Yeah. Well, he said that there's the existence of aliens, giants, which is another cool thing.
And that was one of his other controversy things, that these were, and the giants were the mixing of different, like the giants were the result of mixing of different species.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. There was a lot of predictions. I mean, some of them we can go through if you want, but he had some successful predictions.
Yeah, let's focus. So he is mostly known for his predictions. We'll talk about some of his other supernatural abilities, but let's talk about his predictions right now, his prophecies. So pick one, Phil, one of his successful ones.
I got the stock market crash in 1929. So, I mean, is that a prediction or is that just the writings on the wall? And he's, I mean,
it depends on when you make it, right? So if you make it far enough in advance,
I don't know when the prediction happened. To be honest,
I couldn't find out. I'm assuming from the predictions I have, these were made prior to the events occurring.
Oh, well, otherwise they're not a prediction.
But would you know? Look, Edgar Cayce said this. Yeah, he said it a week after it happened. It's not a prediction at that.
So all the ones I read, they're very vague. You know how like Nostradamus predicted that like Hitler, but they did. His name wasn't Hitler, and he wasn't a German, and he wasn't.
I found a mix of here's what he said and here's the interpretation, and I found others like Edgar Cayce said something. So the one I like is the city of Atlantis will be found near Bimini. It was discovered that there are healing crystals, powers in the waters of Bimini, and quartz crystals are recognized for their healing properties to uplift, empower, synchronize many types of energy, such as light and electricity.
Does it actually say the Bimini?
Bimini. Okay. This is the paraphrase of what he said. So I have, in some cases, I actually have the raw quote, which I'll read and then say what the interpretation is. This is like, hey, he said this or something close to it. Because
did it become the Bimini Road because he said it, or was it actually the Bimini Road? I mean,
the debate about was it natural or man-made, right? And everybody says, look, it looks uniform, so symmetry doesn't exist in nature, therefore it's man-made. It's like, wait a second, some geologists are going, okay, we found similar things elsewhere, but then other people say, well, it's layered. Like it looks like if somebody were to lay a road, they would lay it like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, we looked at it. I mean,
yeah. If you're not sure, folks, check out the Atlantis episode. I don't know what number it is, but
season
the title
1. Like and subscribe.
Subscribe.
He predicted World War II, apparently, which I was like, what? But he did this in like 1930 something. So did he predict it? He said there would be, an upheaval of things. It's very vague once again. So I guess you can construe that there was a World War One. And then there would be a World War II. I don't,
Well, again, it's hard to say, right? So so while we're on that topic, let's talk about one of his failed predictions. He said 1933 would be a good year.
Well, that was not a good year.
For the record, folks, 1933, we're in the Great Depression, and guess who comes to power in Germany in 1933?
Yeah, our good friend Adolf Hitler. Yeah. So and this is what I mean. Like, it's like me saying there'll be a World War III. Of fucking course there's going to be a World War III. I mean,
unless you give a date for it, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that there was no dates given. There was no, that. So it's quite vague. It's like Nostradamus. Anyone can look at his things and go, okay, well, in the history of humankind, things tend to repeat themselves. It's just the way it is, right?
So talk about vagueness. Here's his quote that's been interpreted as the death of two presidents. Okay. There will be a turmoil. It will be characterized by strife between labor and capital. This will lead to conflicts in our land. Before you have the second of the presidents, they will not finish their term in office, a mob rule. And apparently this relates to the death of FDR.
Lincoln. Oh.
Lincoln would have been a little bit.
Oh, wait, before.
Jesus. Okay.
Back to Nostradamus. I'm stuck in the past.
It's only a prediction if you predict it before it happens.
Was it Lincoln?
So 6 years after the prediction, FDR died in office. And then he went ahead to also say, until there's more give and take, consideration for those who produce with better division of the excess profits from labor, we will experience another turmoil in the land. And then Kennedy dies in 1963. So this has been,
but that doesn't interpreted. Yeah, but that's so vague. Turmoil.
Communist, by the way, Edgar Cayce was a big proletariat bourgeoisie guy, apparently.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Well, because he talks about the turmoil, the labor and capital.
Yeah. Interpretation of predictions is a dangerous thing. And I think that, you can interpret things in a lot of different ways. You may say, well, it happens with you and I, where we view, a subject, and you have an idea and I have an idea. And, we agree to disagree, and that's the world.
The right idea and the wrong idea. Let's just
say that yeah, there's a right and wrong side.
There's a right and wrong side.
I know what side I'm on.
Wrong.
That's right. Do
you have one of his other wacky predictions?
I wouldn't say this one's wacky, but he said that blood would be used as a diagnostic tool. I think that was actually one of the more I don't know.
Quote about it.
Yeah, what's that? Yeah, you have it.
For as is seen, there is no condition existent in a body that the reflection of same may not be traced in the blood supply. For not only does the bloodstream carry the rebuilding forces to the body, it also takes the used forces and eliminates same through their proper channels in the various portions of the systems. Hence, we find red blood, white blood, and lymph all carried in the veins. there are only separate. These are only separated by the very small portions that act as builders, strainers, destroyers, or resuscitating portions of the system. See, hence there is ever seen in the blood stream the reflections or evidences of the condition being carried on in the physical body. The day may yet arrive when one may take a drop of blood and diagnose the condition of anyone's physical body.
Yeah, which I think is a pretty bold statement. They wouldn't have had blood tests that early, I would not imagine.
They could barely keep at that era. They could barely keep it in you if it was falling out of you. So I mean,
it's a bad day if it's falling out of you. I mean, spritzing maybe.
It depends on whether it's a vein. So
Yeah.
folks, in case you don't know, if it's bright red and spurting, it's an artery, and if it's dark and oozing, it's a vein.
Yeah, or coming from an organ. It's been inside an organ and returning to your heart. Not good. Black bad.
Good. Like bad.
So yeah, he pole shifting. Did you read about that? Where he predicted in 2000 that well, now it doesn't say exactly when, but yeah, he says that the pole shifting for magnetic north and all this other stuff, which is very common. Pole shifting is not, that's been known for many, many, many years. But he did predict that it would be in the early 2000s, and surely did fuck early 2000s.
Now, he was so one of the things people say about some of the things I read anyway about him was he wasn't it wasn't the whole tucking the books under his head to read them. He was an avid reader. So this fellow consumed knowledge.
For sure. He was uneducated, but that doesn't make you unable to read and unable to educate yourself. You know,
right.
I don't think he was a stoop by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
So,
and I think a lot of this stuff, like our blood prediction, his, Edgar Cayce's exercise routine, the pole shifting, depending on, and he read a variety of topics. So he didn't necessarily drill down on any one particular topic, history, philosophy. No, he studied them all. Like he looked at everything. I don't know how deep he went in some, but
I don't know. But if you look at a lot of what he's saying, a lot of the medicines from the, the Orient, right? If you look at like holistic in terms of like, the eat less meat, eat more vegetables, exercise,
good advice, huh?
For people. Yeah. Like if you look at the Orient, you look at, the longest life expectancies of people. And there was based on eating smaller amounts of food, fasting, all these things that, are coming to Western civilization doesn't even fucking, it's like eat more, consume more protein, get more calories. Food is so abundant.
You don't become a world champion weightlifter, Phil, by not consuming your protein, buddy, and your shakes.
Well, right. But I mean, for the average individual, that's right. Yeah. Me, you, I mean, we don't need the excess that we often, have. And that was what he was promoting, was like eat less. Which, okay, fair enough. Eat less, eat more in terms of from the earth. This would be a time where like things like bread and would be very prevalent. Like I know growing up, like bread was like at every meal. It fills you up. It was
filler, man.
For sure.
Grain,
and it was cheap.
Grains are why our population managed to grow. Without grains,
that's it.
We'd be screwed.
Well, we'd be nomadic. I mean, we wouldn't be farming. That's for damn sure. But I mean, a lot of what I'm seeing is maybe he had some kind of connection to, somebody.
So if we want to hop off his predictions for a sec,
sure.
One of his claimed psychic abilities was access to the Akashic records. I'm probably saying
I read that and I did not get it. I was like,
this is like, imagine if you had the ability to access the collective unconsciousness of the universe.
Okay.
So think like, okay, by the way, folks, you all have that ability. It's called the internet now. So you can now access, now some of it's garbage, but hey, this was back in the belief that you could go off and you could
untap
on yourself. Yes. And tap into this and access this knowledge, this wisdom of the ages, this wisdom of the universe. Essentially, if anybody knows it, you have the ability of accessing it. Yeah.
I don't know if I buy that shit.
They're a collection of all the thoughts, events, knowledge, and ideas that mankind has had since the beginning of space and time.
That would be a lot to learn in a short.
Yeah, but if you could,
period
if it's
of
properly,
time.
if you do a proper Google search, Phil, you can find this stuff, right?
That's right. I prefer Bing. Oh yeah, me and four
people,
me and that half dozen other users, as we sift through all of the shit on the internet. Yeah, no,
interested. Use DuckDuckGo, by the way.
I've never tried DuckDuckGo.
It's one they don't track you. So all the other ones, there's tons of trackers. So if you're interested in privacy, use DuckDuckGo. But this collective unconscious, this Akashic records.
Yeah, I read.
Essentially, leads back to your point that this was somebody who had a connection. So it funny enough, some of the advice he's giving.
Yeah, it's some of it's really sound, you know, and he helped a lot of people. He helped a lot of people. You can't deny that, because I mean, he has a foundation that still fucking exists today. You know, this thing is like 100 years old.
Foundations, because he had two.
I only know of the one that his descendants are running as of yet. That's the Enlightenment and the Association for Research and Enlightenment. But prior to that, and this would have been back in 1930, I want to say 1930, before R was formed. Mm-hmm.
So actually, maybe late 1920s, he had the Association for National Investigators and a hospital.
Okay. Yeah, he did. I remember reading about the hospital.
And so the Association for National Investigators was part of that. Like they were joint.
Yeah.
This was the idea, was to create this massive conglomerate university camp, something massive.
Yeah, but it didn't last, right?
Well, turns out a little thing called the Great Depression happened, and all those things kind of folded hard.
Right. Well, right. He did have a lot of
R, but they became R after that. So they all folded, and then he moved to Virginia Beach. So he moved from, I think it was 1 second here. So he moved from Kentucky to Alabama to Ohio. And then moved to Virginia Beach. And then that's where he was setting up his foundations and whatnot.
Yeah, like he did, you know, it was 7 months before the 1929 depression started. And he was right about that. So that prediction. Anyway, he predicted that Roosevelt would die, you know, before the end of the war.
The one I just talked about with the two presidents.
Yeah.
He predicted the Jews would return to Israel.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yep.
But he did a lot that didn't happen. Right? Like there was a lot of that did not happen. So
pick a good one. Pick a good one that didn't happen.
The second coming of Christ in 1998. I was there in 1998, and I didn't fucking see Christ.
Did he stay below the radar?
He might have. He might have been in like Albuquerque or something, hanging out. That was a big one.
How about the lost state of California? 1960s.
And New York.
I know. I didn't know about the New York, but I knew about the California.
Yeah, he predicted New York.
The ocean. It was the badge.
Yeah.
It was all gonna fall in the ocean.
Yeah, he said that North America would experience chaos. Los Angeles, San Francisco will be destroyed, and then before New York, and New York will fall. I'm like, oh, the second coming of Christ was in 1998, though, and it didn't happen.
Yeah. So, well, in 1960, California didn't fall. I mean, California probably now wishes they were in the ocean, given the fact they're on fire. But
so was BC. It's crazy, man.
Isn't it bad? He also predicted a new Christian China.
He said that China would become more of a Christian state.
It would become the cradle of Christianity. It is not the cradle of Christianity, folks.
No.
Now there is Christianity in there, but Buddhism still remains, I think, the most popular religion, assuming you're the religious at all.
Assuming, yes.
Yes. So, like I was saying before the PP break happened, China did not become the cradle of Christianity. It's still mostly Buddhist. So that was another miss for our good buddy Edgar.
Yeah. Actually, China in the news. China is becoming quite the little, little brat.
They're a rising superpower, my friend.
Yeah. They're. I better start learning because Biden is really pissing them off. So.
Well, so brief aside from Edgar.
Yeah.
The previous administration angered the rest of the world. So now poor Joe is stuck with trying to go off and pull back together. And the rest of the world said the previous government basically showed us we can't rely on the US, which,
Yeah, but they're not wrong. Yeah.
They're not wrong, but
they're not wrong. Yeah. So
I digress. Do you want to talk about R a little bit more? This is the organization he had set up. So some fun facts about that. Did you know in some states it was illegal to do fortune telling?
Yes, I knew that.
So apparently, if you wanted a reading, you had to join R.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
And because part of this was set up to insulate Cayce from this, being burned at the stake in Alabama or wherever it's illegal, right? And I think it's actually more common than we think, the illegal fortune telling aspect of it.
Well, I think
insulate him from it because he wasn't being paid to tell your fortune at this point. He was providing a service as part of your membership.
Yeah, so fortune telling, I'm not sure how that exactly worked, where it was illegal. I think it was illegal to not, have to pay taxes, similar to prostitution, right? The act of prostitution in, like, for say Canada is not illegal. Not declaring it as a business and paying taxes is the illegal part of the business, right? So
I always operated under the belief that it was the solicitation that was the problem, but I know they've really dialed that back, saying, well, you know what, sex trade is a thing, and as long as you're playing by the rules of the tax man, I think is if it's consensual, like you're not being forced into it, like in the sex trade, for God's sakes. Like that's one of the biggest problems. The sex trade. So when I use the term sex trade, folks, I don't necessarily mean the slave sex trade. I mean the fact that sex trade workers, like escorts, that a whole category. You're selling sex of some sort, and you're not in a.
It's the oldest profession, and I don't ever. It's like when we decriminalize marijuana. You're the amount of effort and time where the police should be focusing their effort is in the actual sex, trafficking, right? Where you have these young kids that are, and then rehabilitation, right? Or helping to, figure out a cause or a problem. Like, why are you becoming a prostitute?
Try to fix the problems that the socioeconomic issues that led
throwing people in jail for it for short periods of time is sort of the amount of bureaucracy and paperwork and money that it takes to do that is just fucking staggering. Why not throw money at like rehabs? Hey, what do you want to like come live here? this rehabilitation player, I say rehabilitation, this, help you to get you on your feet type idea, educate you and do all these other things. Because the cost for just one arrest would be thousands of dollars in man hours, man or woman hours, person hours,
folk hours. It's like you were talking about the legalization aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's an Onion article that says, war on drugs win.
Well, there's no, you can't beat that.
It's a never-ending battle, and you can't win it. So you do the legalization angle does sort of fix that, saying, hey, well, legalized it, so congratulations, you won, and now we can devote our resources to something else. And that's where you're seeing with the sex trade, not sex trafficking. Thank you for the correct term, Phil.
Yes. I agree.
Hey, let's remove the stigma from that, because that way you can help.
That's right. And I think too, you can, when you decriminalize, let's say marijuana, like in the States, they still, if you have a joint on you or what have you, you can do like some jail time. Like you could be in prison for like a year And what it does is just overcrowds their prison systems. It just doesn't make any sense. And
Edgar Cayce wouldn't have been for any of that, right? So this fellow was focused on helping. And some of the cures he suggested, I'm sure, given the fact he was deep down the rabbit hole in the homeopathy thing, I'm sure he was probably prescribing some either,
Well, he couldn't really prescribe anything, medicinal other than,
he could prescribe. He could say, "Go get this." I don't
think
he couldn't write a prescription, right? But he could say, "You need to acquire this." And apparently, the organization, or at least when it was the Association of National Investigators in the hospital, they actually had medical doctors who were very loose with their prescription pads. Like
very loose, yes.
I mean, they give them hard drugs, but it was more like, "Hey, you need this."
I don't know. He was an interesting guy. I mean, was he a fraud? I mean, who knows? Do I believe there are people that can do things that are, somewhat unexplained? Sure, why not?
When you talk about the fraud angle, though, this is an interesting one. Apparently, Harry Houdini Harry Houdini was a huge skeptic debunker. He would regularly go off and challenge psychics and basically try and and apparently he had a reading. Now, I couldn't find too many details other than that Harry Houdini had a reading, and I don't really know any details about the reading he had. But
there was a bunch of famous people that had readings,
but that's where Harry Houdini is important, because this is a guy who's basically was a professional skeptic.
He was, but then of course he has an eternal flame lit in his. He promised his wife that he would come back if he could come back. Did you ever read that? Yeah, it was really interesting.
I think he got killed by, I believe he got killed by a punch to his stomach. That
he did. Yeah.
But it wasn't a punch. Apparently it was like he had an inflamed appendix that just happened to burst or something like that. But
I don't think it helped. But but he wasn't ready for the punch. So he was famous for allowing people to punch him, but he was ready for those punches. And he was not ready, and this guy hit him, and he died a couple days later. But I believe that was from the actual strike to the stomach. But at the same, it was something to that effect, that he wasn't prepared for it. Like he was going through a crowd.
I was not prepared for it, but I did not know about the eternal flame and that he would come back.
Yeah, so that was on. I can't remember where I watched that, but he had
maybe that was part of his. Maybe that was part of his reading from Cayce. Maybe Cayce said,
"Yeah, there was something like
burns. You can come back."
If there was a way, he would find his way back, and it had something to do with the eternal flame. Whether that eternal flame is still lit, I have no idea. But yeah, I think there's lots of things that we can't explain. I think there's lots of things that we say fuck it, like that doesn't exist. But maybe there are stuff out there that we just don't understand.
This organization that he created in the 1930s is still going strong. There are so many now. Some people would draw parallels and say, well, yeah, there's also a lot of believers in a guy who died on a cross too. Right. Or
a dude floating around up in the sky on clouds.
Right. Or, Buddha. Like there's so many when you think about the idea of belief, when you have a critical mass of people, they're like, okay. Now this guy, again, he had some interesting predictions. A lot of people who went and saw him got better. So
they did. And that's maybe the most compelling thing, is that, people got better. He did help people. So I can't fault him for that.
He didn't come across as a snake oil salesman, as a charlatan.
Yeah, he didn't die a rich man. He probably could have. He could have had his own fucking religion based on some of the shit that he did, right? Like
I said, the organization that was set up dedicated to his teachings. That's usually the first start. I mean, didn't Scientology
very occultish?
Scientology kind of started with the teachings of L. Ron Hubbard. Like
teachings. He wrote a fucking space book. It was a novel.
Dianetics wasn't even very good.
It was a terrible book.
Did you read it? I've never read it.
I never read it. Well, nobody fucking reads Dianetics.
Under your pillow.
Under my pillow, yeah. But that's a whole thing right there, Scientology. Jesus, that could be an episode.
Those who don't know, Edgar, one of his predictions was of his own death. Okay. And apparently he was accurate with this.
Oh, well, that's not good.
Well, okay. So what it was, I will read you the exact. Okay. During Cayce's own readings, he was repeatedly warned that if he read more than twice a day, he would pass away. To Edgar Cayce and 1,000 requests for help, he would proceed to ignore the warning and give readings anyways, often more than 7 or 8 per day. Okay. By the fall of 1944, during a reading for himself, was given his final warning advising him to stop working and rest. He was advised to get out of the office and stay away and stay at a nearby nursing home. Okay. So here's the question. So this is question answer. Question. How can the body best free himself of worry and anxiety concerning the office routine? So this is him basically giving his own reading of himself. He's asking himself these own questions while he's in this state. Answer, get out of the office. Question, would it be well for me to go to Roanoke, Virginia? Answer, you can get all of these treatments there. Question, how long should I stay? Answer, until you are well or dead one.
Well then. Yeah.
He did not follow his own advice. So he actually had a stroke and then
how old was he?
I believe 67.
Geez, that's pretty young. Well, even back then, I mean,
this was 67, so this would have been 1945. So was 67 young in 1945? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, it's young. I mean, well, back then, I don't know. Maybe not.
What was the average lifespan back in 19? Actually, here, I have Google. I'm going to go off and
you're going to Google this.
Records. I'm going to tap the records. Average lifespan. Got to spell it right.
It would have been the year he was born. Would be the lifespan.
Well, I'm going to focus on the year he's dead, but let's see what 1967 looks like.
He lived in 1967? No.
No, fuck yeah, Jesus.
1945. Yeah,
45. Jesus, you died at 67. Thank you.
Yes.
I was going to screw stuff up. Okay, so let's see. Come on. Life expectancy in the U.S. 1900 to 1998. Come on. Here's the answers. I'm seeing 63, 64.
Really? That's fucking young.
Oh, like that was actually born in 1945, which is not quite accurate.
Okay.
Come on. All right. Come on, baby.
I would think that if you were born in 45, you would, probably have a life expectancy of 70-ish.
Okay. So we're looking at, so if we focus on 1945, it's 67.23. But if we focus on the year he was born, which was, his year of birth was 1877. So 40 was the average life expectancy. But again, this is life expectancy from birth based on the year, not you were born, right? It's based
40
on
years.
Yeah. But that was apparently if you were in 1880, the average life expectancy was 40. So by the time our good buddy died, it was.
We'd be old men.
Yes.
Can you imagine?
Jesus, we're not old men already. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I don't feel that old, but I mean, we didn't.
I'm that old in the mornings when I get up.
I snap, crackle, and pop all over the place.
Me and my dog racing down the stairs back in the day. It's ridiculous.
Oh my God. I know.
So do you want to summarize?
Sure. I can summarize.
Or do we have,
you do it so much better than I do.
Well,
you are a good summarizer. But I can.
How about before I summarize, how about we get in the last comments? You were saying about your belief in Edgar Cayce. You believe he's a complete fraud, and
no, I don't actually believe. I don't believe he's a complete fraud. I believe that his heart was in the right place, and I think that there's some things that are unexplained. However, I don't know. I don't know what to really believe in this fellow. I don't think that. I think that if you do 14,000 readings, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 will come out okay. We don't know the exact number, right, of failed predictions.
And what counts
or
as a failed prediction,
diagnoses,
right? Like what
or-
counts as a failed, right? Did the person die? Did they not get better? You know, and
yeah,
how much
there's
of it
no
can be dismissed?
real way
Metrics.
to tangible, evidence of what he did and didn't do. I mean, other than he did all these readings, he did thousands and thousands of readings. Okay, great. But how many were successful?
Yeah.
So with that said, do I think he's a fraud? I think that we would have to see numbers to justify, to say anything other than he was a dude that, believed he was doing what he was supposed to do.
And
That's
I think when you say
know.
fraud, that's the important part.
Yeah. So,
He believed in what he was doing, and he was doing
right.
whatever it was, and people were believing him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't, so that's not fraud.
Fraud
Right.
is when like your buddy Ketchum, who was the snake
Right.
oil salesman, who was like, "We can make
Yeah.
some money here, buddy."
Which horse is going to win on the 19th? Okay. Yes. But yeah, that's my kind of my take on it. What about you?
I think it's a great story. Again, you look at the enduring nature of his stuff. He was the father of the New Age movement, which
Sure.
I'm a big fan of, breaking away from traditional ways of thinking and expanding
Mhm.
our consciousness. I believe he had psychic superpowers? I believe there
Yeah.
are things we don't understand, and who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe he was really perceptive and just could figure things out, or maybe he was being. I don't know.
Who knows?
Like, you're right. We don't have the data to say what his success rate
It's
was.
another one of these, like, it's too far in the past to in 1960 we if we were having a podcast, you could go, okay, well, he did this and that and the next thing. It might be easier to believe, right? But now, I mean, everything we base things on is tangible evidence. Everything is like, we need to touch it, feel it, smell it, see it. It has to be there. Lick it. What? and it's just not there, right? So, and all of these records are through his own organization. So that's the problem. Therein lies the problem, right? As they're not going to discredit their founding father.
Well, they're not going to kill the golden goose, because the fact
fight the hand that feeds
are based
them.
on his teaching, right? They're based on his teachings, all the stuff. They have that element tied to them. So if they prove that, if they were to disprove not the divinity, that's not the right term, because he was not divine, but if they were to disprove his abilities,
well, then they're
go
frauds.
off and try, they're in trouble.
So so summary, I mean, we have a man born with superpowers of clairvoyance, and has a bunch of terrible jobs as photographer. Decides to help people with predictions of medical diagnoses, and he gets some right, gets some wrong. Creates a foundation, and then dies of his own prediction. Yeah.
Pretty
So
sure
you're
you
way
just
better at
set
this.
the plot to Quantum Leap.
I love that
Back
show.
in time to save people and save Lincoln. He predicted the death of Lincoln.
Oh no. He went back. He went too far. Cayce return. Casey return. No, an interesting story, worth listening to a few podcasts about. I listened to a bunch of stuff. Some people get really into this. Like, he's become like a folklore sort of character, which always, there's always embellishment when people get like that, right? So
and let's not forget, this is the era of yellow journalism, when they had to sell newspapers. So nothing sells newspapers like psychic Superman saves world.
Yeah, predicts World War II, sort of.
Yeah, kind of, maybe.
All right. Well, I don't know what we're gonna do next week.
What are we doing next week, Phil? This is on you, buddy.
It's all on me. You know what? I want to do, because we beat around the bush with it, I want to do MK Ultra. Finally.
I saw something on Netflix called Wormwood, and it said about the man who survived MK Ultra.
Oh yeah,
something like that. Yeah, I don't know if it's a made-for-TV movie about it.
Because there's links to Canada. There's links
Montreal.
That's right. There's So it kind of is a little bit close to home. I don't know a lot about MK Ultra as a project. There is some declassified stuff, so I think it'll be interesting. And CIA shit.
It brings us back to our government conspiracy aspects we've been talking about for a
Yes.
couple episodes, where we touch on the shitty stuff governments do to their own people.
So many fucking things,
So many.
and we all
And
just
people think it's
okay.
stopped. That's what I love. People think we've stopped doing it because reasons.
Yeah. We only get caught. Then they do something different. Oh, but we learn from it, right? As a government, we learn how to do things so we don't get caught. Like genocide of indigenous people, kill all the children. Wow. Oh, we feel sorry because we got caught, right?
Are bad.
Our bad. Yeah. That's a terrible thing. That's a whole other fucking story. Dear God, those poor children.
Yeah, and we might want to let things cool a bit before we touch on that, because
Yeah.
I'd rather us not get. We would probably get more hits, but yeah, I mean, it's
Well, you would in a sensitive way. I mean, it's so fresh, but
that's it. That's why.
there's a lot of-
That's why I kind of don't want to touch on it. 'Cause I
no.
think need to let it a chance to scab over a bit, have more information come out, and it's like, hey, here's what
There's-
we know.
There's going to be thousands of bodies, thousands and thousands. So, but on that note, thank you very much for watching the OC. I'm Phil. This is my co-host Corey, and we will see you next week. And we will do MK Ultra. Those CIA bastards. We'll figure it all out. And I mean that in the nicest possible way.
That's nice as possible. Yeah, hopefully those people that were running MK Ultra, they've gotten
Yeah.
over it.
They're,
Hopefully.
maybe. I don't. Maybe. Who knows? All right. Have a good night, folks. Thank you.
Take care.